I'm in Max. You are listening to Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. I'm in Max. Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
Why, hello, and welcome to Season 23, Episode 3 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
I'm Mac.
This is Tappy.
I'm Clara.
And, it's Friday, finally.
We gotta get down on Friday.
Friday.
Well, look at the time.
Best song ever.
It's time for Mac goes literally somewhere else o'clock.
I'll go with you.
Oh man, totally cover that song. That'd be awesome.
Please do it.
Oh, yes.
It's alright.
I'm suddenly very on board for this.
Absolutely. In this episode of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast, Johan from Sweden talks about party splitting, and exploding dice. Joshua from Canada sends us a couple.
They send us a whole couple
Of stories, I think.
Oh.
And contends.
Then who are those people in the back?
and was I supposed to do that to them?
I was wondering why they kept saying A.
They're very polite.
Yes.
Yeah.
And contends that burps are okay in Canada. Steve in SoCal writes in on the virtues of accurate timekeeping, per the Gygax.
I have questions.
But first, if you would like to email us, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We're on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. And we're on MeWe. Happy Jack's RPG, all one word. MeWe is a lot of people from Google Plus, because there are a lot of RPG people on Google Plus.
Yeah.
It's going to be shutting down in like a year or something. So they're starting to migrate, and a lot of them seem to be migrating to MeWe. So I went ahead and set up a page
Awesome.
there.
I'm the youngest person in this room, and I had no idea what that was.
That's just because we're plugged in.
They call it social media done right.
I'm clearly out of touch.
Oh man, I thought when you said done, I thought you were going to say social media dungeon, which I don't even know what that means, but
I can see a couple potential outcomes for that, and I'm okay with both of them.
It's MetLife.
It is. There's no advertising on
not
it.
wrong.
And when they get big and they have a huge user base, I wonder if there's still going to be no advertising on it.
MeWe?
Yes. Right now there's zero advertising. It's actually it doesn't have a lot of that. Here's some other people you may know. You have to actually really go out and search for other people.
It's not much of a social media thing, then.
It's anti-social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will sync with your contacts and see if there are other people that you know that are on there.
Horrifying.
I have a feeling I didn't do that. I went through it. I said, don't import all my contacts. Let me select which ones. And I'm like, click. But
All 5 of them.
no, they were like, it's
Joking that you don't like.
there were like 20,
me, knows
maybe
like
20 or
10.
25 people who were already on it.
There you go.
But there's a group there. It's a closed group. You have to ask, and I'm usually pretty quick about adding people into it. There's not much there yet.
Sounds like I'll have to make a WeWe account.
Once MeWe, not
MeWe.
Yeah, not wee.
That's a whole different
That's
social media.
that's pet life.
It's a social media stream. This is on the stream. I'm super not sorry about anything right now.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
Starting off so well.
Is WeWe.com taking
I'm sure it is.
And you have to pay extra for it.
Don't Google it.
I'm Googling it. Fuck that.
He's looking.
It's the squatter sitting on it.
Oh, boo.
Oh,
That's
that's
what-
ironic.
I tried it with one E and two E's. Both are being squatted.
I'm so glad my grandparents are watching this.
Are they?
No,
Oh, good.
I have no idea.
Is Tinkle.com taking?
So I do new Happy Jack
Winky?
social media site called Tingle.
Tingle is again.
No.
I
something
said
else.
Tinkle. I just under enunciate.
All right.
I'm bad at this.
Anyway, hi. Oh, we have a convention coming up, President's Day weekend.
Yeah.
We do.
Orcon? No, we just had Orcon.
We just
Gateway.
Gateway.
Gateway? Yeah, I think it's Gateway. LAX Hilton Hotel. I don't even know the dates yet. We'll figure that out in the months to come. Hi.
We were doing something. Oh yeah, podcast.
Party splitting and exploding dice from Johan from Sweden. Note to Stu. Please read when Taffy is on.
That's awesome.
How serendipitous. I actually did read that, and I'm like, okay, I won't deal with this right now because I got it last week.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, happy bags of RPG ramblings. Greetings from the freezing Sweden, where all light is gone and the sun will not be seen for some months yet. At least with a full-time job keeping you indoors during the sunlit hours.
Oh wow.
I finally caught up.
Woohoo!
Oh, I should say, he's talking about the backlog.
Yeah.
I was confused.
I started getting some nagging emails from my hosting company. So seasons 1 through 11 right now, I took them off the server. Mm-hmm. I've had a few people comment because there's always half a dozen people working their way through the backlog at any given time. I'm going to figure out a way to put them back up. I'm probably not going to put them up in a way that they're going to be accessible through the RSS feed. I may zip them. I actually already have zipped them, put them in zip files per season. I may torrent them. So for the completists out there who want the entire thing, I may put them on torrent or something so that you can get it. Because I don't want to chew up. I'm skating on the edge of the bandwidth we use right now on my host, and they're like, they haven't said anything about bandwidth yet. They didn't say something about storage space because now that we're putting all these APs up, and APs are sometimes 4 hours long.
Right.
It's quite a bit longer than most episodes, and there's sometimes 3 a week happening.
When did you start recording these?
2009.
Yeah, I'm astounded by any human who listens to the entire backlog of these because I tried.
There's a lot
I
of
don't have that kind of
Well,
patience.
and they were also long.
Especially season 3 through season 6, 2.5, 3 hours was not uncommon.
Uncommon. Yeah. There's a lot of drinking you can do in 2.5 to 3 hours.
Yes, and then a lot of horseshit rambling happens right after that.
I put you guys on 1.5 speed because I don't want to deal with it. It's very funny.
In the early episodes, listening at 1.5 speed, we were probably almost unintelligible because early on, our biggest problem was talking too fast. Because we would start. Remember, we used to always go slow down. We used to do the slow down symbol.
Is that what that means?
Stretch.
Oh, it's stretch. For those of you listening on the podcast, we're making I don't even know how to describe it.
A stretching motion with your hands.
It's like making taffy.
Yeah.
I found the podcast 2 years ago, and I was in need of a real podcast, not some fickle one that stopped after a few episodes. Well, that ain't us.
No.
I scrolled and scrolled in my podcast app, and finally the first episode with only Stu. I have since waded through the immense backlog, never giving up. The podcast went on, and while generally of excellent quality, Tappy's disappearance was a source of intrigue.
He disappeared.
With me, too.
I had almost caught... Well, none of us really knew where you went at first, and then I discovered you had been posting on Facebook, and something about your location was East Jesus. That's how I figured it out.
Where'd you go?
East Jesus.
Oh, clearly. Never mind. I'll ask you later.
I had almost caught up when I was distracted by the Moat actual play, and then, on the very first episode after that detour, Tappy was back. He is alive. Or at least rambling around. Now to kick a dead horse and give you something to talk about, let me share a Swedish-style exploding dice mechanic and the ultimate case of having split the party. The first one is for Tappy. When you were in a rut for Savage Worlds in the early episodes, there were recurring discussions about exploding dice. There is a Swedish RPG called Eon, E-O-N, I guess?
That says
Aeon?
Aeon.
Sadly not translated, which features a standard fantasy world with elves and such, as well as some crunchy mechanics. When rolling skill tests, a number of d6s are rolled determined by the difficulty, and any 6s rolled are picked off the table, and 2 new d6s are rolled in its place. Huh.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. While slightly...
I think I know what he's talking about.
Okay.
I think I figured it.
Yeah, you take those off and you just roll too much. So the dice are literally exploding.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like the exploding cups in near the end of Harry Potter. When
Yeah.
Right. And you could actually like roll a 6, take it off, and roll 2 1s.
Right.
Okay.
Taking off the table and 2 new d6s are rolled. While slightly different, that is still quite similar to the systems you discussed. The twist is that this is a roll below your skill to succeed system. Oh, so you want to roll low, so exploding dice are bad.
Yes.
And the bigger the dice pool, the harder the task. What do you think of this kind of reversed exploding dice? Discuss.
Okay. So
Now, he didn't say, are they still adding the sum, I assume?
it sounds like it's just adding the sum and trying to get under your skill.
Right.
How high
And
does your
then
skill
there
go?
is I don't know. It
Yeah,
does,
clearly,
but
yeah.
the thing that's really interesting about this kind of system is rolling under your skill systems. I actually really like because you don't have some arbitrary number that you're trying to get over.
Right.
You are just rolling under your skill. So higher skill obviously is better.
Like GURPS.
Yeah, like GURPS.
Right.
So that one, it's a very elegant way to do your system. What's cool about this one is that remember when we were talking about the Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game, and Joey was here, and he was like, "Yeah, I played it. It ended up being really boring the better you got because you have this was also with like the early Star Wars. You roll like 5d6 or 10d6 or whatever, and add them all together, and because like." Of how dice work, rolling multiple dice, the more dice you roll, the more likely it is you're rolling close to average because there are just more combinations that are towards that. So it gets more boring as you get better. Whereas this one, it gets like when the difficulty is less, it's actually almost more exciting because you have a wider variation of what you can roll.
Right.
Right? And when there are more dice, it gets scary because then you have more opportunity to roll above your skill. And so one thing that you look for, and one thing in Savage Worlds that happens a lot, is like the game works well in being exciting, right? That's one of the things like the pulp action.
Right.
But because of the vagrancies of how the dice work, the better you are, the only thing you really do is mitigate risk. Whereas the worse you are, the more likely it is your dice will explode, which is more exciting.
Because you're going to explode 25% of the time on a D4 as
Right.
opposed to 33% of the time on a D6 or whatever.
Well, it's 16%.
16%.
But you're also rolling them together because you're going to be a wild card. So it's
Right.
actually something like, I worked it out. I forget what it is. But basically, you just figure out how many combinations you have that don't roll a 4 or better.
Right.
I think it's like 7 or 11 or something. I worked it out before. I forget now. Really, like the higher you get, the more you mitigate risk, which is for a pulp game is one of the kind of troubles with it that I think we were talking about here. Whereas this one, the better you are, the easier it are, the more confusing or you don't know if it's going to actually happen the way you think it will.
So I'm assuming you've got either a stat or a skill that you have a set number at.
Yeah.
And
And
then
you're trying
the
to go
difficulty of the action
Is
is
how
going to
many-
determine how many dice. The more
Right.
dice, the more difficult it is.
And so if you have a low skill...
But you're going to try to roll under some kind of
Yeah.
target number, probably in your character sheet.
So if you have low skill but easy thing, you're still rolling... Your distribution is still more than if you have a high roll, high skill.
Right.
Right. But it's... and so I think it kind of intrinsically makes it really exciting because the math is more complex. And you can really go for it when it goes to more difficult things.
Right.
But when you do, it can go really, really horribly.
Right.
And
That's
that's a lot of fun.
One of the things I like about complex dice systems, because I'm not good at math, and it's very difficult for me to figure out, like the roll and keep system. I will never be able to figure out whether 3 keep 3 is better than 5 keep 2. I don't know. I don't really want to know because this is what I got.
Right.
I'm gonna hope.
Well,
Which is what I want out of my dice system.
what's also cool about that, because they explode, if you're rolling 7 keep 2, you might have 2 10s.
Right.
Rather, as opposed to 3 keep 3, you might not roll those 10s.
Right.
So it is complex and interesting. And this one, like this kind of explodey system where you're trying to roll under and the difficulty is rolling more dice, that's fucking cool.
Right.
And then the exploding, you roll 2 extra dice. I'm actually really into it.
Right.
And
unfortunately, it's not translated.
Unfortunately, it's not translated. I just need to learn fucking Swedish because there are like 5 or 6 games that have come out from Sweden right now. They're goddamn amazing.
Now, you had mentioned when we were talking before about that a Japanese system, because the thing that you had mentioned is that these different cultures kind of have a different way of going about role playing, not just in mechanics, but with dice mechanics, but other mechanics as well.
Right. Or just general theme or the kind of feeling of it.
Right.
Yeah, it's a Tenra Bancha Zero, which is this old, I think it's from like the 80s or 90s. And what's really interesting about that system is all about accumulating karma, which in this is bad, and you need to clear out your karma, because if you get over 108 karma, something bad
Nice
happens,
round number.
Yeah. Well, but that's also a cultural number.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
108 has a lot of meaning, as opposed to just 100, which is a nice round number.
How
That's
is that?
the English
I wonder
translation.
how that was arrived at. Why it is. Do you know?
I think it has something to do with a like mythological story or something.
Oh, okay.
You
Is
know?
8 a lucky number?
Well, it depends on what country you're talking about.
For Japan. I know 4 is an unlucky number, but
thought that
because it
was
sounds like
China.
death.
Yeah, I thought so too.
like
For
China.
8.
I think that's China.
I could
Yeah.
swear it's. No, because never mind. I'll talk to you about it later.
Regardless, yeah, it's 108 for a very specific reason because
Okay.
it's a very it's oddly specific.
Right.
But also there's this idea of ki and aiki, which we talked about. Like aiki is like aikido, and ki is like that shout you do in karate when you punch something. And so it's the same letters but in different directions, so they have vastly different meanings. And so ki is like experience you can get from the GM from doing things, and aiki is experience you get from other players who give them to you when you do something really interesting or interact with the character in a way that works for your characters or stuff like that. So it culturally, like even disregarding like the dice system and how stats work and everything, just how the experience system works is very interesting and very unique to that culture, and very different than you would just make anything in America.
Right.
And there's some great. I just got this. I forget what it's called right now. This really great post-apocalyptic game from Germany. That oh my god, the art's awesome, but it has its mechanics are again really very unique and very different than kind of the standard. We've kind of gotten to a rut, I think, here in America with either hippie games or stat plus skill.
Right.
And so I think stuff like this is fucking cool. Like I wanted to sit down and kind of crunch these mechanics and kind of see what it looks like.
Right.
Because it almost feels like there's going to be a point where no matter how good you are at something, there's a point where you're just rolling too many dice and getting too many d6s for it to matter.
Right.
Which is fine. I mean, having something be too difficult for you to do, but still have a chance somehow to do it.
I'm assuming your target
That's cool.
numbers are fairly high.
Yeah, I would assume they're somewhere around.
Because I mean, if you're talking like 10 dice pools of 10,
Well, I mean, you might be talking about dice pools of 2 to 5.
that's true.
But if you have dice pool of 3 and you have a skill of 10, there's still a really good chance that you're not going to make that.
Right.
But if you have a skill of 10 and you have a dice pool of 7, there's
108 degrees Fahrenheit is the internal temperature at which human body vital organs begin to fail from overheating.
Oh, good to know.
That's probably not.
well over 104. That's when your brain starts to cook off because that's when you
Right.
get heat stroke.
Heavy Metal Jess says it's a yoga Buddhist thing.
Okay. I also think that GCG, who created Exalted, read this game back in the 90s, because there are a lot of like concepts in it that are echoed in Exalted. Yeah, it's fucking ridiculous. It's great. Like War Striders and stuff like that are all in it, but they have kids piloting War Striders because they don't have too much karma, because you have too much karma in these, in these like 30-foot magical robots. Then you get trapped in the magical mirror that actually is the computer that runs it. It's bananas. It's so cool.
That sounds awesome.
It sounds bananas.
I want to go to there.
Yeah.
All right.
So more games from more different countries and more different cultures.
Right.
Translate more games
And
for us,
like we were
please.
talking about outside, if you were to take some of those concepts and integrate them into an L5R game, you make something way more authentic.
Yeah. Or even not authentic, just very interesting when it comes to how that culture works.
Right.
Because one thing that we've discussed and we've talked
Reinforces
with Jim
the
about,
culture, right.
is like you can come into it with a D&D concept in your head of how the culture works, and I don't think you quite grok with it. But if you have things like this, it kind of forces you more mechanically into that culture. It becomes easier to play. Easier to play it.
It's like what in L5R, if you want to do something spectacular, you have to declare before you roll the dice, I'm going to hit my TN plus 10. I'm going to roll 10 higher than I need to roll, and because and if I do that, something more spectacular is going to happen than just simply hitting the guy with my sword, right? And we had been talking about and had even considered coming up with a different way of doing that, because it's sort of a bidding system. It's like, okay, I need to roll 20 on these dice, but if I can roll 30, I can like lop the guy's head off or whatever the thing is. So, and but if you decide not to do that and you roll 30 anyway, so you just hit. You don't get that for free. And for us, that's like, but Jim talked to John Wick, who was the designer of L5R, and he's like, samurai are people of intention. They don't do great things by accident. They do them because they intend to do them. So it's a mechanic that's meant to sort of reinforce the culture they're trying to portray in the game. And I think that's a valuable thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh,
That's
just
right.
this is only tangential related. The idea you're discussing is a ludonarrative, where the mechanics of the game or basically, I might have this wrong, so someone correct me. Ludonarrative being the function by which you tell a story or receive a story is how also tells a story. For example, video games about pacifism, where it's like, yeah, you're like a really great guy who really doesn't want to kill people, but also between cutscenes you're busy murdering everyone. The ludonarrative doesn't reinforce the story narrative, whereas games like, it's on the tip of my tongue. The one where you can do like an entire mercy run.
You mean like Fallout?
No, but
Because Fallout,
yes.
you can do
You can do that in Fallout too.
and never kill anybody.
Basically, if you can go through a game, there's a someone's going to yell at me for not knowing this, but
Is it like
it's new.
it's new.
It
Wow.
looks very much like Earthbound, but it's not. It's like a spiritual successor. Sans is one of the characters. Oh my god, I'm dying.
know.
Anyway, one of the things is you can show mercy to people in the game, and that's how you can go through the entire game. And that's part of the idea is that like the game mechanics reinforce the idea of being able to not murder people
Do
all
you know
the
where
time.
that term comes? Is that a computer game term?
I genuinely don't know.
yeah,
It's something that I've acquired over years
Really?
and years of just being a nerd.
Is it
Deus Ex Machina?
No, it's
That's
8-bit. It's an 8-bit game.
Undertale?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm dying.
Is it like
Thank you, Weaver
Ludo,
Child.
the monster in
No,
Labyrinth?
I have no idea where
Okay.
it comes from. I will send the answer to where it comes from with someone from next week's Happy
Okay.
Jacks.
All right. I'd be interested because that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I'm
to
assuming
know.
that term is used in computer games.
Probably, or just discussion. Or
Right.
it was invented to describe the issue at hand.
Okay, well, let's coin it for RPGs and define it succinctly right now, so it doesn't turn into sandbox.
I heard that. You heard it here first. Ludonarrative discusses the game mechanics telling the story, or reinforcing the story.
Nailed it.
It's a taffy narrative.
There's a game.
Damn it.
There's a strategy board
Ludo.
game called Ludo.
To the Google machine.
Is it Ludo? Do you know how it's
I think
spelled?
it's UDO.
Ludo.
Yeah.
Ludo rules. I'll have to search this.
I-
That's interesting.
I'll have to look it up, figure out where I heard it first, and then I might be pulling all of this out of my ass, in which case I've invented a new term.
You can coin terms. It's
I know.
totally allowed.
I'm Shakespeare and shit.
All right. On to his next. To my story on how to split a party. I was starting up a new game with 4 players as an earlier game had been put on hiatus due to scheduling problems. The game was Vampire the Requiem, and for the initial session, the players were mortals that was one after the other embraced under sketchy circumstances during that session. I meant most people are embraced under sketchy
I was
circumstances.
gonna say, how do you not get embraced in sketchy circumstances?
Hi.
To say the least, I think
It's like
they're
you
always
got
sketchy.
you got swiped right or swiped left or whichever swipe it is, and you show up and goes, "Hello, I'm a vampire. And I'm going to murder you
a
and
vampire.
then raise you as the living dead."
I have always wanted to play like a diehard Twilight fan who gets embraced at one point.
And then you're
I
really
just want to
sad
see
because
that situation happen.
well, that,
Well, there was an NPC in
I'm gonna have
the Lotus.
PTSD from this conversation.
I'm so sorry.
No, I had to work on stuff for this film for a very long time.
I'm so sorry. Hey, they paid you, didn't they?
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah, with fucking blood money and not good vampire blood
In
money.
portions of her soul.
yeah, it's like blood diamonds.
Yeah, it was. Nice to
If
say.
it makes you feel any better, later I can tell you about the Christian horror movie I worked on.
That sounds horrifying.
Anyway,
Haha.
under sketchy circumstances during that session, no vampire owned up to the deed, and everything pointed to a single sire. Now they still have guild or clans in Western,
Yeah,
right?
but they just have 5.
Are they
And
actual?
then they have bloodlines that peel off that. But yeah, they have.
They also have like what do they call it? What's the term? Like not alliances.
yeah, they're like factions.
Factions. Yeah.
There's a
that's
different term that they have.
different.
For it. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have you're born into your clan, and you are, I don't even know if they call it clans. I forget. It's
Might
been
be
a long
bloodlines.
time since I played it. Well, I think the bloodlines are like you can be like Tremere, but then your bloodline might be Lasombra. Does that make sense?
Huh.
Because it's kind of related to that Tremere concept
Okay.
of like the being in charge of everything,
Right.
you know, master of your domain. And so there's like Deva is one of the clans, and Toreador is one of the bloodlines because they're like the sexy clan.
Okay.
So yeah,
All right.
you're born into those.
Well, during character creation, I made sure each character knew at least one of the other PCs. The first session ended without the players having met as embraced. The subsequent session saw each player meet at least one of their fellows with the suspicion of true vampires. In the third session, powers to be in the city forced them all into the same room to try to figure out who their sire was. But at the end of that, they each went on their own way. This set a trend, and while during the rest of the campaign, some 30 sessions over 3 years, while they explored the mystery of their creation and tried to secure their own personal hideouts and contacts, they never again were all present in the same room at once. Wow.
Whoa.
I have thoughts.
That's a lot of sidebarring.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most sessions included at least a pair of PCs meeting up, and the PCs did phone each other semi-regularly. Oh, okay. But while sometimes goals aligned, they never joined up permanently. I may write more about this game at some time later. I think there are a few factors that made this work. Well, it ran for 30 sessions, so you did something right.
Yeah.
I was going to
Holy
say that alone is a
shit.
feat.
Firstly, I had good players, even as it was the first game ever for one of them. Secondly, we did everything at the table with no player secrets, so players not in the scene could still enjoy the story. Third, I was super careful to switch focus among the players often. You'd have to do that if they're never in the same place. I had a goal to not, in general, spend more than 5 minutes before switching to another PC, ensuring that they all got to act promptly. Also, combats in Requiem are quick, and we did not have very many. Sadly, the game petered out. Well, that's okay. 30 sessions is a good run.
Yeah.
While I failed to make a bang at the logical end, and we kept going. Then things like getting kids put me on game hiatus entirely.
Oh yeah.
It happens. But then they get older and they can turn on the Xbox by themselves, and then. But when talking to the players about the game, they are still excited at the subject. One particular incident in the game is still super useful to put one of the players in excited denial, but that is a story for another time. Thoughts on this? Thoughts on this? Splitting parties, pros, cons. That's all for now. Later, douchebags. Best regards, Johan from Sweden. P.S. The way you Americans use fucking as an explicative is hilarious. It just makes it sound so kinky when you are mad at each other.
Beautiful.
So fucking kinky.
Right, so fucking kinky. I blame all spelling mistakes on autocorrect on my phone that cannot figure out which language to use, thus avoiding taking responsibility. PPPS, fucking amazing.
Amazing!
There weren't any spelling mistakes, so.
There are a couple of wrong words.
Wrong words, yes. But spelling mistakes, no. So good on you. I only speak one language.
From running the Moat game, party splitting in Vampire is pretty common.
Yeah. It was hard to stay with the party given the nature of the way that the characters are built out and how it is as a game. It was really hard because trying to find the motivation of why the fuck are you around all these other vampires? You've got to figure out exactly why you would stay.
Why don't I get on a boat and leave?
Yeah.
And I would like to hunt people where you aren't.
Right.
Why are you not solitary hunters?
That's an interesting point they bring up in the second edition Requiem book. I think it was that one. Is that these are, they specifically say, these are all solitary hunters. They are not meant to work well together. It's like a bunch of
we're
tomcats.
gonna put them together.
Right.
Yeah.
A game that we had also had tons of party splits was Monster Hearts.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
constantly.
And for most of the time, it worked really well.
Yeah. I actually like running games to split parties just because I think there's a lot of things that are interesting that can happen with that, and especially when they do start to cross paths again.
Right.
But I actually really... Sometimes I intentionally try and split up parties to see what I can get out of them and try and isolate them and give people some individual story time as well. But to go 30 fucking sessions, which I'm guessing is very kinky to say it that way, apparently.
30 fucking sessions. And those are lots of fucking sessions.
Yeah, so many, so hard, so hot. But that's fascinating to me. That's its own kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
I think if you look at it as if it were just scenes in a TV show, there are lots of TV shows where people, the entire party, quote unquote, is not in the same place at the same time.
Well,
So as long as you, you pace it correctly and time it, and you think about, where the movement in that scene is beginning to go down, then you start thinking about moving to the next one.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's what they do in the Star Trek game we're running, where they actually have a mechanic built in to that game where not everyone is going to be on the bridge at the same time. That's weird. And not everyone is going to be planet side at the same time. So they have an entire mechanic where you build side characters so that you can play as basically making a secondary character, I guess, or the ship.
Or you can make 10. You can make 10 of them.
We're doing
Yeah.
that on our game
Yeah.
here.
I cannot wait till somebody uses my character.
Which one's yours?
I have a Delton with a switchblade.
Specifically just a switchblade?
Yes, very specifically a switchblade.
What's
But
a
they use
Delton?
Delton are the shaved head ones. They don't have any hair. In the first Star Trek movie, There was the chick who was one.
Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yeah, that one.
I didn't even realize she was an alien. Okay.
Yeah, the one where
Oh,
it's
yeah, I
like
think maybe
I
I
have
did.
to take the vow of celibacy. That one.
I watched
Yeah.
it in the theater, and we
promptly forgot it.
we all thought it sucked.
Yeah,
Basically.
because it did,
Yes. And when the second one came out, we're like,
and then it turned out to be rad.
right.
But yeah,
Well, I was going to say that, I mean, there are some games where it hinges on being able to split the party. The only other game I've played that I can think of where it does, we've had to split the party and it didn't bother me was Fiasco. So,
Oh, sure.
which is,
Well, that's also got kind of a round robin mechanic to it, doesn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, and it's also sort of supposed to feel, it's also, or at least it was, what are you looking for?
I just need a beer.
Oh.
It's in here.
Oh, it was described to me as being, you're making a Coen Brothers film. So
Right.
as soon as someone was like, oh, it's a film, I was like, all right. So the scenes kind of make themselves play out.
Right.
Paranoia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That is
Absolutely.
one where you have to because it's all PvP.
Right.
Well, not all, but mostly.
Yeah. And horror narratives are really great for splitting the party, too. I remember I was running an episode of Phoenix Dawn Command. That's the first game I ever ran.
Mm-hmm.
And I did sort of a haunted house episode that was sort of taking a riff off of the haunted house episode from Buffy. So I was intentionally trying to find ways to split up the players so that they had to kind of face their own personal demons separately
Right.
within this environment that they were in. And that was a lot of fun to try and intentionally break up the party and make them deal with their own tasks without assistance from the other players.
See, that brings up an interesting idea because one of the things that a lot of games you make the party together, and what's the one question at least one person's going to ask?
Why are we hanging out?
No, what does the party need?
Oh yeah.
Do we have a healer?
Oh.
Do we have a fighter?
That's me.
Do we have
Because of
DPS? We got
balance.
ranged, right? Because you want to make a nice balanced party, so you have all of your things covered. You split the party up.
Yeah.
Healer and the DPS guy are over here. Damage sponge is over here. These guys meet something scary and dangerous.
That's why I make a buddy system.
Right. Yes. But I mean that kind of makes that can make for some very interesting dramatic situations when you take this party that, especially like in D&D and stuff like that, where if you get players who played for a long time and know their particular edition very well, they're going to make a finely honed machine of a party that can just peel off hit points as a matter of course.
Right.
But you split them up and you put a couple of them over here and a couple of them way over there suddenly, and they're both in combat at the same time. Maybe you're bouncing back and forth while they're two Can we kill this thing so we can get over there because we know there's a fight going on over there.
That's
You
what
got,
hell sounds
oh man, you
like.
have your
It's
wizard
awesome.
and your ranged DPS in like one thing. They're like, oh no! And then a xenomorph comes out and they're like, why are we here?
At the same time, waiting for another group to finish combat sounds like my own personal hell. Like,
Oh, I
I'm
would
just
make it.
sitting-
I would alternate turns back to
Of
back.
course, it's just
And I wouldn't do it in D&D because combat takes too long to do.
Yeah,
yeah.
it takes too long.
I know it's kind of taboo to say like, well, one of the nice things about splitting the party like that is that I can like get up and pee or like play play Candy Crush on my phone while I wait for my turn. But because I'm broken tappy.
Well, if you're playing the board game part of D&D, I can see how you would play Candy
Yeah.
Crush. But when you split the party and there's actually like
Well, you
story
want-
going on, and you're like, beep 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 beep.
And I've talked about this before. I'm a big proponent of the whole immersion thing. And if I'm playing, and I don't play very often, but if my character doesn't know something, I don't want to know it either.
That's why you
Right.
play Candy Crush.
So I don't know if I'd play Candy Crush, but I would intentionally not pay
Fine,
attention
best fiends.
to what's going on if I'm not there. Because you get that whole Schrodinger's
Right.
metagame thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, would I have made this decision if I didn't know what had happened, even though my character doesn't know and I'm pretending I don't know?
Yeah, and if you're only half listening, then you're gonna naturally kind of ask your play like in character later, like, oh, so
Anything interesting happen while you're at He's taking notes.
Yeah.
He's writing down what the next thing he's going to say.
Yeah. No. I'm drawing.
Okay.
I can't draw.
All right. Anything else on that?
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Okay.
I think that's it.
All right.
Just because D&D is its own very specific animal when it comes to things.
Yes.
And I think that's where the nomenclature of never split the party comes from, for exactly the reason that she's talking about. But for games that aren't D&D, of which there are many, I don't see that big of a problem.
Right. And it can be interesting. I mean, I like the idea of, oh, okay, you guys are exploring over here, and you guys are over here, and you guys get attacked because the healer's over there, or whatever. All right. Stop Apologizing and Stories from Joshua in Canada, who would like to read it. This is the first time you've been on the show, huh?
It's my first time I've been on
The Friday show.
this.
What, you want to do the next one?
Oh, God, no.
Why not?
I don't read out loud well.
Well, you've come to the right place.
And I do. And it's only a page. It's not like it's a jib email. Drink. There's a drinking game on Facebook.
I
don't
love
know if
it.
you saw that.
I saw that.
Those
I
of you
love
on the
it.
Facebook page, one of the listeners put up a drinking game, and it's got a whole bunch of bullet points about events that happen when you take a drink, and that's one of them. Mentioning the length of an email and mentioning jib.
And
It was epic.
Yes.
There's one for you, isn't there?
What's that?
No, there's like a you drink if you do something.
Oh, I'm sure there's buckets of them. If I say rad, if I say amazing,
Amazing was definitely
Yeah.
on there.
All right. I don't want to do it.
if I swear, what else? Make an allusion to gaming having to do with group sex. That's probably on there.
I think we did that.
I don't
today.
know if that was on
Have
there.
we?
Not yet. No.
No, we just made a lot of FetLife jokes.
Yeah.
That's true. I'm just
No,
stalling.
actually,
I don't want to do it.
That might count.
Come on.
Do it.
Hey, if
This is hazing. Come on.
oh, you guys are
Yeah, making you read.
mean,
It's
and
hazing.
I'm a mean person, but you guys are meaner than I am.
But are you?
All right. Good.
I'm meaner.
Stop apologizing and stories from Joshua in Canada. Good morrow, douche pun. Sorry, am I supposed to make one up? I don't know. I have been a listener. I've been a listener of your guys' podcast for a very, very long time. Your backlog was just a steaming pile at the time and had not yet become a cesspool of high-quality content. First off, as a Canadian, stop apologizing for burping into the mics. Shit sakes, we drink and burp all the time. Laugh more than apologize. Okay.
Well, I got the whole reason there's a story behind me apologizing to Canada every time I burp into the mic.
Okay.
I discovered years ago that you can look at other instances of iTunes if you on the web page or the app on a computer. If you scroll down to the bottom, there's a little globe with your country's flag, like a little circle, and if you click on that, it puts up this huge list of the iTunes stores in other countries, because they don't always have the same stuff in them. The languages change, obviously. But even the podcasts, some of them don't, like our podcast, because it has cussing in it, may not be available in Saudi Arabia, for instance. But the reviews are separate, too. So I would go to, like, England and read the English reviews, because I don't get the English reviews when I look at iTunes normally. Go to Sweden and see the Swedish reviews. Of course, I can't read them because it's Swedish. But like Australia, but I went to all the English-speaking countries, and I would look at the reviews, New Zealand and Australia, and then I looked at Canada, and we only had like 2 reviews in Canada. One of them was a 1-star review, and it was all about how fucking annoying it is that we burp into the mics and we're fucking children. Not fucking children.
Yeah, maybe not that part. Maybe
That would be
maybe no.
very legitimate complaint.
That would be.
But that we were acting like children.
Yes.
And so that's when I'm like, huh. And then for a while because it was like a really scathing review too. And I'm like, wow, let's try not burping as much. And then other people say, why aren't you burping? The Americans, why aren't you burping more? And so now I burp and apologize to Canada. Just to kind of poke that guy. Anyway.
But also not sexually.
Not saying.
No, it's more like a prostate exam poke.
Ugh.
Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So it's a feature, not a bug.
Exactly, it is now.
Second, I want to tell a couple success stories.
Huzzah.
Story 1, summer of 2016. I'm working as a highway line painter. Who cares? And it says that, first of all. And my coworker expresses an interest in D&D. Sweet! That same week, my son, 17 at the time, expresses an interest in D&D. Kick ass! I set up an afternoon to run in a quick intro using the lost minds of
Fendelver.
We run through the first little bit with the Goblin Cave, and they were amazing. They ran like a team of Navy SEALs, sneaking and stealth kills the whole way through. They don't even get caught in the ambush at the start. They see the dead horses and split up to either side of the road and sneak up on the waiting goblins, ambushing them.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, don't get into fights, get into murders.
That's right.
Can we get that on a shirt?
Sure.
I want that on a shirt also.
I really want that on a shirt. At least crochet it on a throw pillow.
Or needlepoint.
Yeah. After following the trail to the Goblin Cave, they hunch down and sneak through, covering their own areas of the path, getting the drop on everyone. It was insane. And so much freaking fun. Unfortunately, we haven't played since my son became too cool and my friend moved away. But I prod my son every once in a while, and he seems somewhat interested, but not yet. Story 2. I'm working away from home doing some bridge construction. Because of the location, we are staying in in holiday trailers in a gravel pit instead of hotels. Perfect. They can't run. Reasonable. One day I grabbed my books and herd some of my coworkers into one of the trailers and tell them to make characters.
Nice.
This isn't as bad as it sounds, as they have been interested for a while, but we never sat down to do it. We spent the night making characters. One is a warlock who feels guilty about his powers and is working for the church to try to redeem himself while keeping his powers. Another is an assassin for that same church. Sounds Catholic, no? And finally, a barbarian who just wants to hit stuff. I run them through the same scenario as it is now somewhat familiar to me. Wow, what a difference. Instead of looking for an ambush when they see the dead horses in the road, the warlock says, I use Ignite and start them on fire.
As any good PC should.
Right.
Burn
I mean,
it.
Especially new
burning
players.
dead horse smells great.
Oh, tasty. I stop for a second and say, roll initiative. Once they shoot at you, once the fight is on. After that, it was a murder hobo holiday.
In Cambodia.
Killing everywhere. Fuck sneaking.
Fuck sneaky.
Also not okay. They can come to us and we will kill them all. After that night, it was constant, can we play again tonight? For the 3 weeks we were on that job. We never really got to explore character concepts much. We would talk about the characters while at work, and light RPG, and light RP, and a little, but when it was game time, I gave them what they wanted. Things to kill and stuff to take.
That's right.
To be fair, also, when you've been doing, like, construction all day, I think relaxing and playing a board game of murdering stuff, that sounds great. Get into really in-depth role-playing, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's like, usually, a lot of people will run fairly light-hearted games at game conventions on Fridays, because they know that, especially in LA, everyone just had to commute through rush hour traffic to get there.
Yeah, after a full day of work.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't want story, I just want to kill shit.
Yeah. I didn't want to fucking...
Stabby.
I've had people say that.
Yeah.
I just want to turn on Monster Hearts and watch the drama. Not sure what else to say, but I do want to thank you for the awesome content and the advice. Keep it up and have the obligatory drink and keep having fun. Regards, Joshua.
Well, if I am obliged to do so.
Thank you very much for the email, Joshua. You know, people like, because we had a survey, people like success stories fine enough. What they really like is the schadenfreude of a good horror story.
Oh,
We
yeah.
haven't had a lot of those lately. If you have good horror stories, give me a humanity scale of it. Like a humanity rating.
Yeah. Right,
because
right.
we've had some awful ones.
Really?
Oh, like, not stories about people being bad GMs or being bad gamers, but people being bad people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, some of them have been awful. But give me like a I don't know. I have to come up with some sort of rating system. So like, use like the MPAA ratings.
Yeah. Or also, you could just give a content warning if something's really bad.
Sure, yeah.
You know.
And then I can always, if you give me one that's got a bad content warning, I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
Not on air. I'm going to read it myself first because I'm going to see. But and then
that's the way to get you to read it.
That's the way to read it. And then I'll look through it and I'll go, yeah, we can do this. We can talk about this on the show. Or no, this needs to be turned over to the police.
Right.
Because we've had that. Yeah, we've had stories that have that bad.
Mm-hmm.
In the earlier seasons, the ones that are not on the site right now.
I was going to say, can you make us a list?
So if you sent us a horror story for between 2009 and 2013, please resend it. And we can be
for a while we started getting
all over again.
It started to become a thing of one-upsmanship, and we started getting worse and worse and worse ones. And finally, I put on the brakes, and I'm like, okay, no. I want stories that have some sort of lesson about bad gaming. Mm-hmm. So it's that example of how to not play or how to not run a game, not how to not people.
Right. And I think how to not play is really useful.
Sure, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think mistakes. I mean, generally speaking, you learn a lot more from mistakes than you. At least you keep the lessons in your head longer from mistakes than you do from successes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, successes you don't know what doesn't work,
right?
Or you don't necessarily know why it did work.
Yeah.
Right.
But when it doesn't work, you're not for fucking sure.
Although to be fair, I love that it was two success stories using the same starting point.
Yes.
It was like, but two very different types of successes using the same starting point. That's interesting to me, just how differently groups will interact with the same story points. And then how often players just set shit on fire.
Right.
As always.
It's the best.
It's the best pastime of players.
They love their murder and their arson.
Mm-hmm. Arson crafts?
Yeah. Right. Thank you. Thank you for the email, Joshua. Virtue of Accurate Timekeeping from Stephen SoCal. Who would like to read it?
Okay. You do it.
Thus spake the Gygax in Ye Olde Dungeon Master's Guide in the year of our Lord 1979. You cannot have a meaningful campaign if strict time records are not kept.
Now let me dissect this for a second. You will notice in High Gygaxian, the passive voice must be used.
Oh,
sorry.
This is true. Gygax said a lot of shit.
Yes, he did. He had a lot. He had a lot to say.
He had a lot to say,
and some of it was smart.
Some of it
a lot of it was smart.
Yeah. Some of it is.
Almost all of it is in the passive voice, though.
Yes.
At least in the DMG.
Yeah.
When he was conversational Gygaxian, the passive voice does not always have to be used.
Right. But in High Gygaxian,
always. I think it was Heavy Metal. Was it Heavy Metal Just that coined the term High? No, it wasn't. It was someone on Twitter. I can't remember what her handle was. It was someone on Twitter. It was the first time I saw the term High Gygaxian.
It's beautiful. That's art.
Low Gygaxian.
Oh, no. Conversational.
Conversational Gygaxian. There's no such thing as low Gygaxian.
No.
Come on, let's be serious about this. You don't have low Gygaxian. Let's see. While to some extent I share the crew's derision over the absoluteness of the statement, I'd like to pause for Snickers, this concept a bit further, only with consent. On the side of Gygax, there are various factors. If you can maintain fairly accurate timekeeping, it certainly aids in keeping consistency. If one doesn't pay much attention to timekeeping, you might have the player's sneak attempts hampered by a full moon, multiple sessions in a row, or have the news of a player's exploits travel faster than would be reasonably possible, etc.
That's fair enough.
Depending on the context and the players, perhaps this is fine. Exactly. Perhaps this is fine, and everyone will be happy to embrace some more fun sequence of events, and won't be bent out of shape when they never happen to encounter the moonless night and can't seem to head off the enemy army or what have you. But it's also hard to anticipate what random details someone might be hoping for or waiting to take advantage of.
This brings up an interesting point, because you had a character, what's it called, Lunacy? What was the name of the...
Oh yeah, Asa had Lunacy.
And I had to actually, because I kept track, in my OneNote, when every session I said, here's the date when the game starts, and here's the date when the game ends. It's almost always the same date. It's usually just a few hours. Some game sessions. I think there were game sessions that, like 2 or 3 game sessions in a row, that would still have took place at on the same date.
The one night.
Yeah.
One thing I want to
Werewolf
point
too.
out with
Werewolf too. Razor Ridge.
Right. I bet.
Yeah, I had a lunar calendar for that fucking game.
But I had to, and she had to remind me occasionally. It's like, let me see what the date is. No, it's only been a week. It's been 10 sessions, but it's only been a week.
One of these things, if you look at the examples that he's putting in here, these are all negatives for the character. And it almost sounds like he's looking at timekeeping as a way to make sure the GM isn't constantly punishing you.
Yes.
And
especially like with the full moon thing.
The full moon thing, or the head off the enemy army.
This feels like I feel like I'm going to negate the entire thing by just saying, like, I've never had a game, in any game I've played, where they were like, it's a full moon tonight, so if you play the next... First of all, I can never get I suffer from the D&D player or gamer syndrome, where I just can't get a long campaign going. Mm-hmm. But I've never really had the issue, because usually the GM is like, rolls a dice, it's full moon. And then you figure out another solution. Like, you never hampered for very long by time. But that's also a lack of experience for me.
One of the things what I want to mention here is, if your GM is a fan of the player characters, you don't necessarily have these problems. You know what I mean? Because, like, oh, yeah, but you can, but it's a full moon. Sorry. Or it's like, oh, but you can't head off that army. Like,
maybe because you also might just forget.
Right.
It's also the possibility.
Sometimes
that's kind of
players
constant.
like those challenges too. As somebody who's played werewolf characters in like a garbage amount of games, like that's fun for me. That's why I play those characters, is because I want to have that challenge there.
But if it was every single time you did something at night, it was a full moon.
No, but
And
that's
so-
why
but that's again-
timekeeping can be.
I don't think timekeeping there as much as I can give you a and then the next time you do it, I can do something else that makes it more difficult. Because if it isn't difficult at all, then it can be kind of boring. If
I
that's
think
what
it
your
depends on
character
the
intentionally
game
does.
too. I really do. I think it's context specific.
Well, but what it sounds like here, what he's saying is that he's used to GMs being against the players.
Or either intentionally or unintentionally.
Right.
Because, I mean, I could see myself easily saying, is it a full moon? Yes. God damn it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you want. You asked me a question, I answered yes. That's what I generally do.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I don't know if you're asking because, it's going to throw a wrench in your plan.
And so if this person thinks that it's not fair because the GM isn't paying attention,
Right. Sure.
Right.
Sure.
and so it's a way that this person feels to make it more fair.
Well, and I get that, but it's also like, I feel like it's kind of a shitty thing for the GM to do if they're...
I'm not saying that's a good thing.
Of course. But what I'm saying is, like, like you said, it's a GM who's not a fan of the players is going to, shit on them every time. Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like it is a GM's responsibility to be like, if Max says, like, oh, is it a full moon tonight because she's playing a werewolf character? First of all, I'm a good GM who knows she's playing a werewolf. And I could I'll say yes, and if she looks disappointed, or if she, doesn't instantly start thinking about a new way around it, I can just be like, yes, but like a block away is an amulet that keeps you from turning into a werewolf if you really need it. Like,
You have to know your players.
Yeah, we are controlling this world. If it is a full moon, so you can't sneak into this fortress, we'll find a way around for you if it ruins your fun.
Yeah, I think it's knowing your players, and I think it's contextual, and it really depends, I think, on a lot of factors.
I think...
I should probably read the rest of this.
I don't mind the idea of randomly rolling for that kind of stuff. And I actually have a set of dice specifically for that. It's got, like, a D14 in it, and, like, a D30 in it, and it has all these different dice. What day of the month is it? What day of the week is it? Or what day of the fortnight is it? Or I don't know what you use the D14 for. But...
it's a computer game now, so you don't have to worry about it.
Right. But I don't...
Wow.
I don't mind that. If you're running a game where there's a lot of travel and there's a lot of glossing over time, where you're saying, okay, you guys are traveling through the desert, you have enough water, okay, it's going to take you like 3 weeks. So, 3-4 weeks later you're here, and you're running fast and loose with the pace of time passing. It seems to me perfectly fine to say, is it a full moon? I don't know how many phases of the moon there are. What, probably 8, I would guess? I don't know.
Depends on how granular you want to get.
Well, sure. I mean,
There are 28 if you really want to.
right. But I don't know if I have a D28. I don't think they make a D28. Anyway, but I mean, just rolling. You could use a D20 and a D8 and do it like a percentile dice.
You could do is take a tennis ball and paint half of it white and half of it black. Just roll it.
Oh no, get a D100 and do that.
Yeah.
But that seems perfectly fine especially if you're running fast and loose with the passage of time.
Yeah, but like when I was running Razor Ridge, I was keeping track of all of that because it depended on the different characters. Different phases of the moon affected them differently, and I actually had a starting date and a starting year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I actually had historical context that I was pulling from and actual lunar calendars for that year.
That's what I started doing when your character joined, and then I kept forgetting to look at the...
Yeah, but we weren't having swaths of time that were passing.
No, time was crawling.
Well, and Razor Ridge we weren't either.
Right.
So it made sense, and different, depending on what moon they were, kind of like the auspices they were born under, different werewolf clans have different reactions at different phases of the moon. It's not always the full moon for them.
Okay.
So that was an important game mechanic.
Right. Now, how long a period of time did that game run in game?
Fuck, I don't know, probably a few weeks.
Week and a half.
Were there player characters who never had that prime moon phase for their
Yeah, we didn't
turns?
really end up getting into much, which kind of sucked. I wanted to do because it can make them more volatile.
Right. That's
Which
what I
is
would
fun,
want,
but
yeah.
I didn't really get a chance to dive into that as much as I wanted to because the actual in-game time did not pass very quickly.
Right.
Shocking.
It never...
So, have any of you guys played a game in which that you've spent fortnights traveling,
Sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I used to run an old GURPS fantasy game in college that they would have to travel, and it says, you're between these two cities, and it's 180 miles.
Yeah.
It's going to take you however long. I would sit down and just pencil out real quick how long it would take on horseback to get there, and that much time passed.
BattleTech, Anti-Mech. Our GM, who has an encyclopedic knowledge of that game, knew exactly how long it would take us to get our dropship from that system to a jump ship, jump over to the next one, and take that dropship over to our next thing. I mean, absolutely had weeks and weeks and weeks go by in that one. Yeah. Years.
Travel games, I think, especially, or games where exploration games, are ones where you're going to have that.
Traveler.
Oh, yeah, all the time. Yeah, Traveler, every time you go into jump space, a week goes by.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of cool because you're all kind of trapped in this small little space, especially if you got like a 100 or 200 ton little ship. And you're kind of forced to interact with each other.
That's when they start killing each other's pets and things like that. That's what happened in ours. It was in jump space when it happened because the idle hands of the Devil's Workshop, or idle minds, whatever it is. But Kimmy had a character who had a pet goat, and she was the mechanic on the ship. And Dave's character was like an archduke or something. He was on the Lamb, and he owned the ship, and he got pissed off at her for some slight. And so he told his butler to go kill her goat.
Oh my gosh.
And it all happened in jump space when there's no one else trying to kill them, so they turn on each other.
Jesus.
What if you had a game where all of a sudden, like, ships started coming out of jump space with only one person left alive, and just the walls are painted in blood, and just happened again and again and again, and people were like, oh shit, and nobody knows why, just people are just going crazy and fighting each other, and they come back just like, they all went crazy. I had to defend myself. But you can't tell if another one is doing that because information travels in the
speed of travel. Right.
So the information about it comes with the person who's now caked in blood. Half the ship's on fire.
Right.
As they come out of jump space. And then nobody wants to travel.
I would go insane in jump space.
And now everybody has to travel. Go. Somebody write that down. Remind me of it. I'm going to run that as a one-shot.
I'll
Please
finish
do.
reading this. I feel like we probably discussed half of what's in the rest of it.
Uh-oh.
Let's find out. I don't know.
That happens.
Yeah.
On the side of Arneson, for the sake of argument, I'll assume Dave and Gary disagreed on this issue. Clearly, sometimes strict timekeeping can bog down and hamper play, but I want to poke at how to do that in a controlled fashion. As an example of the struggle is an L5R campaign I was recently GMing. The PCs were far more proactive than I was expecting, meaning that they rarely took a break and managed to address most of the campaign within a couple days of game time. This is fine, except that there were supposed to be some long-term effects of the news on their exploits traveling and outside forces reacting. Unfortunately, in a feudal time period, it takes days/weeks for news to travel and for the armies to respond. So if I have those forces still arrive at a story-appropriate moment, the players may feel cheated, since the opposing forces couldn't realistically have heard about those things and reacted that quickly. But if I wait an accurate amount of time, then the story is far less cohesive. A secondary flavor of the same campaign is that I really want to slow things down to better embody the feel of L5R, but I struggle with how to do that without coming across like a wet blanket to player motivation/momentum. Do you ever find yourselves trying to impose delays, exhaustion, and other methods of slowing things down? Thanks as always for your wisdom-like insight. Steven SoCal, the Grimace on the forums.
Hey, the Grimace.
I've had the opposite, especially in Mode of Sin.
For the love of fuck, guys, get to the next night.
In Mode of Sin,
Good God, sometimes.
you guys would do something, and I would say, "Oh, once the prince on the mainland finds out about this, that's going to be trouble." And so, like, 2 sessions later, oh, it's still October 9th. No, he wouldn't have found out yet. Because if it's like Miroslav, who didn't use technology because he was an old world vampire.
We took forever in that game.
Time crawled. The largest period of time that passed was, I think, 6 or 8 months. And that's because we had a break, and I said, we're going to start the game 6 or 8 months later.
Yeah, that was rough. And everybody tried to squeeze in everything they could within a night.
Right. It's like, I've only
Like
got so much
another
time
night would
before the
never
sun
ever
comes up.
happen
Yeah.
again.
Because there's only one night.
The sun will go down tomorrow. Like, it was like it was
the
never
night
coming back again.
Belongs.
Right.
I mean, I kind of refer to the same thing I'm always told when I talk to costumers about, like, why isn't this movie historically accurate? Because I'm that asshole. And that is, sometimes historical accuracy doesn't fucking matter. It makes a better story when the prince hears immediately because he has messenger pigeons.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you have magic.
Yeah, that too.
right. In L5R, I always assumed that the Shugenja, I don't even think it's even mentioned in the book, have some way to communicate with each other over great distances. I just decided that.
Well, I mean, you have Kami that you can talk to and bargain with and stuff like that. I assume that an air Kami would be able to transfer information to somebody.
I would think so.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just kind of made up a way for that to happen because it makes sense. Plus, also, if you want there to be a repercussion, if communication moves at the speed of travel, the party's going to be gone. They will have burnt the town down by the time the people come up to give them their comeuppance.
Right.
But here's the thing, he's asking about slowing things down, and it seems the problem we've mostly had is like, Jesus Christ, this is taking forever.
Yeah.
So I can't remember, at least personally, being in a game where I felt like I had to slow things down.
No.
It's usually the opposite.
Well, I think he's saying... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think he's saying that the party... No time has passed, but the party won't slow down. They won't take a rest. They won't... and I remember having arguments in high school about, like, well, my spells haven't recharged yet. I need to sleep. And that's a really great way to kind of impose that, like, exhaustion and make just people sit down.
That might be why he wants to slow things down.
I guess I can maybe see that.
I could see that. I could see
Yeah,
like,
that I could see. The other, though, like, if they're just burning through things in what would be a theoretically short amount of time.
Right. Well, and like he's saying, you know, they killed somebody, but armies won't show up for another 3 weeks, and so the rest of the campaign's done by then.
Right.
And so, there's nothing for you guys to do.
Villagers.
I don't know. It's sometimes difficult because my players all love to talk to each other, and so it's
They naturally-
entertaining.
Yeah,
and it's
see-
entertaining and awesome.
This
So-
is a problem we don't have very often. I'm kind of at a loss on how to slow things down. How do you slow things down?
Exhaustion.
Well, no, side, maybe side plot hooks or something.
Side plot hooks. Maybe there's something that's actually environmentally causing something. Like they want to leave town and go somewhere, and it's the dead of winter or something, and they get snowed in or something.
Oh, that's maybe. Is he trying to slow down time or slow down progress?
I think it's progress.
Slow down progress. I think time needs to advance.
Right.
And progress needs to stop so that the armies can show up.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
so
you
if the
physically
armies
need
don't
to-
show up,
that's
then
different.
he's
That's
fucked.
different.
Yeah,
Okay.
if they've gone ahead and fucked off somewhere else and the army shows up.
Right.
Well, and there's nothing wrong. And I guess it depends on the finickiness of your players, but you're the GM, so why not make a really hard boss for them to take a while to beat, or a mob with pitchforks who don't like that you murdered a guy?
L5R doesn't really work with like a hard boss that's really hard to
Damn it.
beat.
I need to play L5R.
You don't really have like giant monsters in that one. It's more of like a guy who just kills you.
Well, there are Oni and there are trolls.
Yeah, but in a situation where
Although
yeah,
the players generally just tend to run away from them. I'll tell you that for a fact.
Fuck that noise, we out.
But also for L5R, like having armies move against armies, not against characters.
Right.
I mean, a summons to your daimyo is much scarier than an army.
Sure.
Or a champion. A clan champion shows up. Oh, fuck, you're fucked.
Right.
If you really want something that, like, it wouldn't be a 2,000 person army to come kill the characters, is what I'm saying. With L5R, you have a lot more, just figure out a way to make it so that...
Probably going to be a magistrate's going to show up.
Yeah, an Emerald Magistrate.
Right.
And then they have to answer for whatever it is that they did.
Right. And that's part of that's... I wonder if part of it is that maybe the players aren't quite in the right mindset for L5R, in knowing that, like, if your daimyo summons you, you fucking show up.
Yeah.
You have to. Any character that doesn't, I would instantly give him an honor hit.
Yeah.
For that.
And, like, if you do something really bad, you're not necessarily trying to get away with it. Right?
Oh.
You may just commit seppuku.
Or at least go and confess your sins.
Yeah.
And here's another thought, just going back and rereading the paragraph about this particular game. It's a long-term effect. They have moved on. Let them think that they've moved on from that and have those repercussions show up way later than they're expecting. Okay, you've pissed somebody off. They're coming to get you. And unbeknownst to you, people in the other towns are paying attention, and they've got the advancing group coming and going like, have you seen these people? Have you seen these people? Or whatever it is. And have that repercussion show up once they think that they're in the clear.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's a very samurai thing to do. I mean, you would have a daimyo who'd say, oh, we need to... that some of my people did something wrong. I need to go and mete out justice. Send a messenger in all four directions and spread the word that I'm looking for them.
And eventually they catch up and your players are going, la la la, we did oh shit.
Right.
Right.
Because, the people that are looking for you, they know you can travel too. Mm-hmm. And that's,
Yeah, and they know sort of the routes that you might go along, and they can question people as you go along. And something I like to do when I'm running games sometimes just to throw a little spice in there is rolling to see, if other people notice or if there's something that sticks out, so that later it's like, oh yeah, that person that you didn't think was a thing at the time, they totally saw you go by and they gave information to so and so.
right.
And also in L5R, it really depends on what clan you're talking about. Because if you're talking about the Scorpion, they have fuck tons of ways to send information.
Sure.
Like, that information is probably there in a matter of days, if not weeks.
Right.
Specifically, like, they have, like, the Yogo and Troshi Shugenja that are good at that, and also just fucking runners and Yakuza and whatever. You have, if it's the Unicorn, they have ridiculously, magically fast steeds.
Right.
If you're talking about the Crab, they
He
have
called me a
ways
steed.
to send... They have ways to send information super quickly, because if there's an attack...
Who does?
Along the Crab.
Oh,
there's an
yeah.
attack on the
Oh, yeah,
wall,
yeah.
they gotta fucking know across the wall.
Well, that's probably like the big
Almost
fires of
immediately.
Gondor or something like
Right?
that, right? They're going to have the
beacons of
big-
Gondor are lit.
Right.
But they also will have runners going up and down with, like, we saw something,
Right.
etc. And so every specific clan is going to have specific ways of sending information. And so that's one of the fun things about L5R is that you can really get creative with that, with the cultures of different clans.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I
yeah.
mean, it very well could be a number of different ways that information is relayed.
I will say it also sounds like based on, I could be reading a lot into this and it's non-existent, but it sounds like based on the tone of how he was describing people feeling like he wants to do this without being a wet blanket to player motivation. You may have players who just want to be murder hobos. And
Most players.
and
Also guilty.
yeah,
Okay.
because of that, like
But all players want to be arsonists.
I wish I could say you're wrong, but I've done it. But it is worth talking to your players if that's the case. Like all things, you should communicate with the people you're working with or playing with. And
I mean, we have a lot of people. I mean, I would say it's safe to say that most of the people who play in our games here, they like it when the bad things they do have repercussions.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if that's always the case with some players. Some players are in more of a I want to win attitude. You know what I mean? Where the winning is success for their character within the game world rather than telling an interesting story or having a fun time. For some of them, it may not avoiding repercussions may be one of those things that like, but I have to do that in real life. I don't want to do that with the character. And I think that's a valid thing. I think. And it may be that you might be right. It may be just like a disconnect between what the players want and what the GM thinks the players want.
Right.
Which is good to check in with players. And also, I mean, we talk about it a lot with GMs checking in with players and making sure players are happy. If you're a player in a game and something isn't working right, for the love of fuck, please talk to the GM. Because that also happens a lot too.
Oh, yeah.
Communication is both ways, and like, seriously, if you're not happy, something's not working right, say something. Good God.
Or else you're going to get into a gift of the Magi situation.
Right.
And
oh.
Master Vita,
Combs and hair and,
Yeah.
and gold chains. It's going to be
bullshit.
What
fucked
do I
up.
do with this coat now?
shove it up your butt.
Matt, I cut off my nose to spite my face, and now I can't sniff Coke.
That's just great, though.
L5R.
Just
There's
rub it on
a-
your gums.
Master Vidar says L5R. It's not as fast. The hit's not as fast. L5R spell echo on the breeze would be your communication spell.
Yes.
Also, Heavy Metal Jess says GM fun is important as well. If your player's style doesn't match your own, you might need new ones.
She is right.
Accurate.
It's hard, though, because, like, if you're the kind of person who doesn't get a lot of gaming, you have to join a podcast in order to just play a fucking game.
Well, yeah, and also we have the luxury of being in an area that has a huge population density.
It's
means
a
you're gonna have
timing
a-
thing, though.
But you're going to have a lot more players in town.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to Idaho and you want to play L5R, there may only be
Amen.
5 people in the whole state who even know what L5R is.
I played while I was in East Jesus because I had the internet,
Right.
right? And not even a good internet connection, like 750 kilobytes on a good day. And I could still play over the internet.
Right.
So, you know, Google Hangouts is your friend.
If it still exists.
Yeah, or whatever the
next
fuck
5
Hangouts you want to
minutes
do.
it's around.
Yeah.
Check out the Happy Jacks forums. Maybe there are people who want to play with you there. Is that bad? Is
Yeah.
that on the nose?
Yeah.
Sorry.
We do have a face-to-face game
Oh.
announcement sub-forum on there where I always suggest that people put the state and town you're in first, and then whatever the game is you're going to run in the subject. That way people can go through and say,
Right.
oh, I live in Bumfuck, Arkansas.
Bumfuck.
Bumfuck.
Great Renaissance Fair out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
the Bumfuck Fair is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to talk about what they export, though.
Yeah.
BFRF, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The leatherworking station though at Bumfuck is whew.
Yeah, those guys are
intense.
crazy.
Yeah.
They work that leather so hard.
Hangouts is dead. G Plus dies in 11 months. There you go. You're fucked.
And back to to the fucking again.
There's got to be some. There's got to be some. I'm sure there. Well,
We mean.
Oh, what was the first?
does oh, is it maybe it's only audio? Discord. Does Discord have video yet?
Yeah, I think they have video, but I don't know if it's groups.
Oh, yeah, I don't
Can
know.
you Skype it? Is Skype not a thing people can use? I don't know.
Yeah,
I
you
never
can.
used
Yeah,
Skype.
but it's
It depends.
It's
Sometimes.
old.
Yeah.
And sometimes
Yeah.
Skype.
I
Skype is so problematic for me because it's like
yeah.
now it's made by Microsoft, so it's like, but I want to decide which audio inputs because I have 5. I don't have one like most computers. I have
Yeah.
more. So,
right.
and I'm sure it's in there somewhere. And then, yeah,
This audio input goes up to 11.
right.
Yeah.
I do. I write 11 on a lot of them.
It doesn't actually crank that far, but he writes it down.
I like that our advice to someone who's like, how do I slow games down? We're like, get new players.
No, I think
That used to be our advice a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, fine.
Yeah,
then
fuck these guys.
And we had a couple people email us and like, you guys live in a place with a really high population.
Yeah.
My town has 60 people. I have to drive 2 hours to get to a game store.
Right.
Stop. I got the people I got.
Yeah. No, a lot of it is like
Because they were sending it by telegram because they're in a town of 60 people.
Right.
if you really need something to happen. Get ticker tape.
What are you wearing? Oh,
Send nudes.
NOODZ.
because their memes are old too.
Ticker tape memes were the best memes.
Yes,
Sorry.
they are.
What were you
So
saying?
what I was saying is that it basically is asking like, how do I make this thing work and have it make sense?
Right.
And the answer is you just do more research about your game world, because
And you can invent shit.
yeah, you can invent shit. Absolutely.
Well, it turns out the spell I invented is already in there somewhere.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, your Shugenja can, if you're running L5R and you need the people to know faster, you can do that.
Yeah.
Now,
And
travel time may still be a problem.
They can still have carrier pigeons.
Sure.
And stuff like that. So,
Unladen swallows.
yeah. Just try and make it work, or you just tell your players, well, you're going now.
Right.
That time is advancing now.
Or you're not going.
Or you're not
because I'm
going.
not quite sure.
Well, I think...
You've all collapsed from exhaustion. Like, sleep
Right.
the night.
Yeah.
Or, if you haven't been specific about what season it is, oh, by the way, it started snowing. Traveling in winter in Rokugan is a bitch. That's why people don't do it.
Now, I wouldn't do something like a just arbitrary, you guys are exhausted, but instead it's like, I need to slow you guys down and have you guys rest. So now what I'm going to do, okay, everybody roll your Earth. Okay, did anybody beat a target number of 20? Yeah, you guys are having a rough time. You're having a rough go of it. You probably should stop doing things.
It
Right,
may-
you give
yeah.
that opportunity. So if some people do have a high Earth, then they can feel like they can stand watch or something or keep going if they want to. But
Right.
everybody has a good and what feels more fair and less arbitrary kind of way to make them stop role playing and let time go by.
Right.
It may make players also feel maybe it hasn't occurred to them to think about long-term repercussions. It hasn't occurred to them to think about basic human needs, or decency. So they might just need. They might not have thought about it. So you're saying roll Earth. They're going, oh, I guess I should stop and sleep or eat a thing ever.
Right. I mean,
So-
a lot of our games we sort of hand wave that stuff, but I don't have trouble with people blazing around super fast.
We talked about that a
They
little
have to-
bit.
it's like, oh wait, there's something to argue about.
3
Blah, 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 blah. Hold my beer.
Especially
yeah,
if you have a
right.
mixed clan party in L5R.
Oh sure. Yeah.
That's the best.
hold my beer, whatever. Is like, give me another one. I'm going to be here for a while.
Hold my sake.
And one of the things specific about L5R2, and I'm harping this specifically on this one game, but it's an example, is that the Celestial Order is a thing.
Sure.
Somebody who has more glory is in charge. And that person can tell them to stop.
Right.
This is not a democracy. L5R is 100% not a democracy. You do not get your fair say.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but like if there's like a legal repercussion in what they're doing, magistrates are kind of a lot of magistrates are outside of the clan system.
The Emerald Magistrates.
Emerald Magistrate. There might be one in town, so rather than the daimyo the party outrunning the daimyo's messages, which obviously they shouldn't be doing anyway, and if they're doing that, they're doing something very un-samurai. But especially if it's intentional. But he may send this, whispers in the wind thing to the Shugenja that works for the Emerald Magistrate, who happens to be in town, or has an assistant in town, and that guy, who probably has a higher glory or higher status, can say, "Hey, come here.
Right?
We need to talk.
Yeah.
You guys are in trouble." The one thing about I put Linux on my MacBook Pro.
That seems like a bad idea.
No, it's fantastic.
Really?
Well, this is like a 6-year-old computer.
Oh, okay.
And it had enough upgrades to the operating system that it became almost unusable. It would take like 10 minutes to boot, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to open my browser, and I get the little spinning beach ball, and it would never go away. And I'm like, should I reboot it? Or is it going to come up any second now? Should I wait? And so I just put Linux on it, and it's like, boop, boots fast. Need a browser, boop, browser's up.
Nice.
It's a very lightweight operating system, and there's not a bunch of a-holes trying to, build viruses for it, so there's all kinds of security things that I'm sure it's a secure operating system, but it probably doesn't have to be as secure as operating systems that have a target on their back,
right,
because they're used so much.
True. There was a...
Well, I know they're in this. I know that Mac is based on Linux, but it's interesting that Linux Mint is running and boots in like a minute, and Mac OS boots in 10. So there's something different. That's the masterpiece.
Is it wafer thin?
It's wafer thin. Mr. Creosote. I'm sorry. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
On the subject of getting to know your players better, there was something I had a GM do for a game I played a while back, and which I thought was like mind blowing, which explains a lot about the kind of games I was playing before this. Where he was like, before we sat down, we had made our characters, and before we started the game, he goes, "I need a list of 3." You could have asked.
Talking go.
I need a list of 3 things you guys want to do in game. And it could have been anything. It could have been like, I want to have a political discussion. Or I think mine was, I wanted to cut a rope on a chandelier. And
like real specific things that you want your characters...
It didn't have to be specific. It could have been like, I want to feel like a goddamn hero. And that would be it. But like mine was definitely like, I want to ride a horse through a ballroom. I want to cut a rope and ride a chandelier into the ceiling. And I forgot the third one. But like... along the same lines.
Right.
But I was like mind-blowing to me. Like,
that's a very insightful GM.
But, yeah, and that was the thing. I was like, holy crap, like, I get to tell this story too.
Right.
Like, I'm not just a hapless player who is, the GM tells us what to do. So it's an interesting, like, and it was funny because, like, he could come up with, he knew what we wanted. It was a several months long game. And we were able to... And there was a fight that happened at a masquerade ball. Mm-hmm. So I was like, my time has come. I found myself a goddamn chandelier. Like, that's what you...
I need a horse.
Yeah.
Oh. I need a horse. Jump horse, grab chandelier, and then you hold on tight with your leg.
Never
and your arms rip off.
I pay money to see that.
Right. But yeah, the point being, like, it was a level of, like, interactive storytelling rather than just being whisked away by your GM to do whatever, happens. And I thought that was kind of cool, and I would try it again, but, again, I never play games. So.
That's a good idea. That's an idea I might steal. I like that. And that gives the GM sort of like a to-do list of things they can check off. It's like, here's some cool things the players want to be able to do, or if they're overarching things. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting idea.
Kind of as long as the players don't feel like they deserve that it's required.
No.
You know what I mean? Because like, oh, I didn't get to swing from a chandelier. Oh, it's like, well, I also am not beholden to these things. There's things you'd like to do, and I like to keep it in mind. And everybody, and that's the understanding the GM has with the players, and the players have with the GM.
Yeah, and it was a yet kind of situation. Like, I haven't ridden a horse through a ballroom. yet.
Right.
And if you're a proactive player, you'll find a way. Mm-hmm. And if you're not, you don't have to do it. It's sort of a
Right.
But the situation presented itself.
And there's always those situations where like we're in a giant ballroom and it's like, is there a chandelier here?
Oh yeah.
And if you've got that on your list of things you want, the GM better
Yeah,
bloody well
better say
yes.
yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and I crit
I am
that too.
all about using fucking environmental objects in games.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny, the first game that I ever ran was Phoenix Dawn Command, and one of the prime mechanics of that is putting environmental objects on the table into the game. So you actually write out what it is in the room, and if they can use one of those environmental objects, they get to draw an extra card. So
Oh,
it
okay.
actually gives them an advantage to use something that's in the environment that they're
Okay.
in.
Every time I hear Phoenix Dawn Command, I just see jumpsuits with like a space patch on them, you know.
And it's so not that
like
at
they
all.
like Last Starfighter kind of shit.
It totally
right?
sounds. Yes,
Doesn't it sound like a sci-fi
absolutely.
game?
Yes.
I've never heard of it, so in my head it's Phoenix Wright.
It's where
like
you.
Ace Attorney.
It's the game where you die to level up.
Yeah.
It's so
Well,
good.
to be fair, L5R First Edition is also kind of like that.
Oh, is it really?
Like, when you die, you get to make a new character with more
XP.
XP. So you make a better character than the one that died.
Because clearly, as a player, you're not doing very well, so you need an advantage.
No, it's to reward you for
Oh,
being
oh,
a samurai.
right.
Because death in that game is not the worst thing.
Right.
In fact, that can be the best thing you can do.
Oh, that's true.
You know,
That makes
like
sense. That makes sense.
there's the story with that Jim always tells that was amazing, where we've been playing our first L5R campaign, been going on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and then he was in a duel, jutsu duel, and he realized, oh, it would be best for my clan if I lose, and so he did not pull his sword and got Obi-Wan Kenobi'd.
Right.
No. And so you get rewarded for that. You know, and I think that's a very interesting mechanic. Same with Phoenix Dawn Command. It's a very interesting mechanic about that. I mean, with Phoenix Dawn Command, that one you're actually still becoming a new character. Like, it's still the same character.
Yeah,
But,
you come back weirder and stronger every time, and it's really cool and fun. And
You come back. How do you come back weirder?
well, because
You have to
basically,
put Tappy on your character sheet.
yeah, you eventually all characters become Tappy. But basically, you have sort of like what the concept of your character is that you're heading towards. So I had a character that had, when I was a player, had died, and they were basically a berserker that had a wolf pelt, and every time they came back, that had absorbed more and more into their person until they were basically like a 9-foot-tall werewolf.
Okay.
We had one guy who he died because of secrets, and he came back every time he became a little more wispy and less tangible.
Oh.
So, depending on what your character concept is and what their ultimate form would be if they became essentially like a godlike creature, what would that be? And every time you come back a little closer to that.
Oh, okay. All
For
right.
those
But
of
also
us,
maybe a little more distant from being human.
Right.
for those of us without access to Google at this very moment, explain what Phoenix Dawn Command is.
So Phoenix Dawn Command is a card-based game that Keith Baker created, and it's basically there was this seeping darkness in the world, and there has been this group of phoenixes that have been fighting it off. And a phoenix basically is reborn. They die in their mortal life through a variety of ways, and a flame chooses them to come back. And they can die up to, I think it's 7 times. It's been a while since I've run.
Unless you're
Yeah.
a cat.
100
Unless you're a cat, yes. And then you get 9. And you come back to fight the darkness. So if you die because of secrets or something that's hidden from you, you can come back as a shrouded. If you come back because you weren't strong enough, you come back as a durance. So you're a stronger type of character. So whatever the reason was for your dying, you come back. But it's actually a card-based game. So it's a little less... the chances of dice rolling, a little bit more resource management of like, okay, I have this available to me right now, and I've got this power that I can use, and what am I going to split up between offense and defense and everything. But it's kind of its own time frame too. It's definitely not space. I would say it's almost more Roman, but it's not that either. It's like its own kind of fantasy bubble. But it's really, really fun game, and it's fun as a GM because you want to give characters a way to die dramatically, and depending on how you die the subsequent times in the game, you don't have to go back through the same school. So if you died because a secret's the first time you came back as a shrouded, and you died the next time because you weren't strong enough. You could go through the Durant thing and actually get stuff from the Durant school. And so you can build out a deck in a different way, so long as you can say, this is why my character died.
I didn't realize it was almost like a deck building game.
It is in a way, but it's not like a traditional deck building game. So when you level, instead of going, okay, I checked this off on my character sheet, you get, here's the cards that you get. Okay. So you get one that can, you get a higher strength card. So if you pull that up with another power, you can hit harder. Or you pull up, I want a power from this school because I died for this reason. You can use that later. It's really, really
so you can have like some of your like equipment can also be cards.
Well, and you don't really have equipment. The one thing that you have is your Talon, and your Talon is actually made out of Pyrean steel. And so that is the one thing that comes through with you every single time you die.
Please tell me your Berserkers, one of those, was a ticking clock.
It was...
Because my love for you is ticking clock Berserker! Would you like to make me fuck Berserker? Because that would be amazing. That'd be the best joke.
I don't know.
Mine did transfer, though, because she started out with a Pyrean steel axe. And then as she came back, it transferred more and more into actually she had these big metal claws instead.
Cool.
But it's a very open system in that way where you can really create any kind of character concept you want.
So do you have, is it like a card deck that you draw from and then like discard, etc.? How many cards are in your deck?
It depends on what level you are.
So what's the most you can have?
3. I don't know.
3? Okay.
No, 3. I can't remember. 3. That's old Celebrity Jeopardy SNL joke. But I can't remember because it's been a while since I've run the game, and also I'm on my 3rd beer.
Okay.
All right.
I'm really
Numbers.
I love card mechanic systems just because they're really complex. If you want to talk about like things being like crazy, like the humankind has never dealt out all of the possible deals of a deck of cards.
Of 52.
Of 52 cards. We've never done all of the shuffles. In fact, if you had 1 billion people...
That's 52 factorial, right?
52 factorial, yeah, which is around, I think it's just under the number of atoms in the known universe.
Good.
It's something like 1.132... I don't remember.
Yeah,
it's like times 10 to the 62nd or something.
Worms, Roxanne, worms.
8.065 to the 67th power.
67, yeah. Tarot is like 1.1 times 10 to the 115th.
That's because it's got 78.
It's 78. I was going to ask.
It's nutty how complex that is, and so it's really interesting because, like, even just 30 cards.
1.132 to the 115th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even just 30 cards, that's 30 factorial.
Right.
So that's an insane amount of unique shuffles you can do with that deck of cards.
Right.
I should run it for a one-shot Saturday. It's a little harder for that, but it's awfully fun game.
Oh,
It's really unique, and I really love it. And it was the first game I ever ran as a GM on a live stream because I'm an idiot.
Gotta run a game.
I've never GM'd before. Do it in front of a live audience, you say? Why not? Yes, please have some.
Excellent. That's what it should be.
Daffy, you and I like very different things about games.
Okay.
You're like, it's so complex, the rules. I'm like, no.
Well, no. Elegant. No. Rules don't have to be complex. An elegant system is one that allows you to move through it quickly and has rules that support the type of game you want to play, like we were talking about before. The fact that cards, it's very difficult. When I was interested in this, it's very difficult to use a pure card mechanic for a game system. I've seen a couple try and do it and failed miserably.
Not exclusively, yeah. I mean,
and it is
exclusively without any die rolls.
Right.
Like what was it? Deadlands did a thing, and also Savage Worlds.
Yeah,
cards,
but just for initiatives,
things,
right?
Yeah. Phoenix was never boring.
Yeah,
it was always interesting, and it was always this really fun. Am I going to get what I need? And then even if you didn't, how do I work with what I have?
Okay.
Yeah, too many rules is stupid.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why, like, games from the 90s and early 2000s have shifted considerably.
Right.
Just because they're just trying to be too simulationist. And that's not a good thing.
That's when I started playing, so
Yeah, and that's...
heartbreaking.
yeah.
And why would you try to be simulationist when GURPS has already perfected it?
You know, that's one thing. Cyberpunk 2020, they had a... Oh, it's all right, you primitive screwheads, listen up, I think is the name of their combat supplement, or something like that. It was around that phrase. And then at the beginning, Mike Pondsmith did this whole thing of, like, I've gone through tons and tons and tons of real-world, like, reports to put together the most accurate depiction of gun combat anyone's ever done. It's like, well, why?
You get shot with a gun in real life and you die. I don't want to do that in game.
Well, that's what happens in Cyberpunk, very specifically.
Right.
Like, it's one of those games where you don't want to get into fights. You get into murders. And so, like...
Because you win murders pretty easy. You don't win fights.
No.
And even if you win fights, pure victory.
Yeah, right? It hurts.
Right.
But he was trying to do too much simulationist. That's why we've moved way away from that to games.
Well, I
like,
remember when we interviewed Steve Jackson, who made GURPS. He talked about the fact that he read a bunch of medical journals about wound pathing and hydrostatic shock and all kinds of stuff to sort of figure out. And I think they were doing it mostly to figure out what the damage range would be for certain kinds of things.
Right.
Because you want to know. In a system that's that granular, you want to know what's a 38 caliber bullet going to do compared to a 223, right?
Right.
It matters. That's why they make both of them.
Yes.
You don't go boar hunting with a 223 because you're probably not going to knock the boar down. You're just going to piss it off. Well, it's going to be hurt, but it may be hurt. It may not be hurt enough to not come and fucking gore you.
Right. Right. Well,
whereas a 308 is probably going to knock him
yeah.
out.
Because, well, and there are different ways that bullets actually kill you. Like, the larger ones punch a hole through you and you exsanguinate, and then the ones that are moving faster but are smaller weight do kill you through hydrostatic shock.
Right.
And do you really want to do all of that in your game?
Well, no, but you just want the numbers to reflect that.
Right,
so
exactly.
you're going to say,
well,
I'm going to do X amount of damage, whatever we're going to call damage, whether it's hydrostatic shock or it's bleeding or whatever. So you're going to say that...
Murder points.
Right, murder points. So a 308 is going to have more murder points than the 223.
See, I don't necessarily think that you want it to reflect that, because I think that cutting somebody from collarbone to hip with a katana is fucking awesome.
Oh, absolutely,
But
sure.
in real human life, you'd probably get stuck on a bone through there.
Probably the collarbone.
Yeah, probably that collarbone.
Collarbone's connected to the...
Heart bone. The heart bone connected to the ankle bone. And so...
That's impressive and also sad. You should see a doctor if your heart bone is connected to your ankle bone. And
right.
if you have a heart bone.
For those of you who haven't seen Tappy from the waist down,
Yeah.
it's just
it's
It's so weird. He has no lower torso.
yeah.
It's like E.T.
Yeah. I walk on my hands.
All right, let's call this.
Why not? This is so entertaining to me.
we just got to the good part.
I have to go hang Christmas lights tomorrow. Jackie's
You
got
do
a
a
Boy
noose
Scout
out of them.
Ooh, Christmas news.
No,
You said you have to hang Christmas lights. So, yeah, come on, Christmas news.
Hang elf on a shelf.
Yes, please do.
No,
That fucker wouldn't stop watching. I had to do something about it.
With his eyes poked out.
I'm stealing that for a one shot. That's the big bad.
okay.
Elf
On the shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got it. Zachary has a Boy Scout community service thing tomorrow, and I'm one of the adult volunteers.
Sorry, Boy Scout Community Service sounds like they went and did something terrible.
Oh, and you need hours now for even Tenderfoot. You need hours.
Oh, for Tenderfoot. You
Community
needed
service.
hours before for like...
Yeah, like Star
Star
Life
and
and
Heart,
Eagle,
yeah.
Life, not Heart. Been a while, huh?
Life, yeah.
All right. Song. Thank you for joining us for season 23, episode 3 of Happy Jacks Podcast. My name is Stu.
I'm still Mac.
I am not still Tappy.
I never stopped being Clara.
And don't you ever thank you very much. We'll see you next Friday. Don't forget, we got games on Sunday and Monday and Wednesday. And then we'll be back again next Friday. HappyJacks.org/live. You want to see us there. Thank you very much. We'll leave you the song. Sorry, Canada. Which one returns the volume up? There it is.
Success.
So it's goodbye, Merchant Durkin. I'm sick and tired of working. No more I'll dig for Brady's. No longer I'll be poor. As sure as my name is Barney, I'm off to California. Instead of digging Brady's, I'll be digging lumps of gold. In the days when I was courting, I was never tired of resorting to the alehouse and the playhouse and the other house besides. But I told me brother Seamus, I'll be off now and grow famous, and before that I return again, I'll roam the whole world wide. So it's goodbye, Merchant Durkin. I'm sick and tired of working. No more I'll dig for Brady's. No longer I'll be poor. As sure as my name is Barney, I'm off to California. Instead of digging Brady's, I'll be digging lumps of gold. Well, I courts the girls in Blarney, in Antrim and Killarney, in Dublin and in Kerry, down to the coast of Cork. But I'm tired of all this pleasure, so now I'll take me leisure. And the next time that ya hear from me, I'll write ya from New York. So it's goodbye, Merchant Durkin. I'm sick and tired of working. No more I'll dig for Brady's. No longer I'll be poor. As sure as my name is Barney, I'm off to California. Instead of digging Brady's, I'll be digging lumps of gold. Goodbye to all the boys at home. I'm sailing far across the foam to try and make me fortune in far America, where there's gold and silver plenty for the poor and for the gentry. And when I come back home again, I never more will roam. So it's goodbye, Merchant Durkin. I'm sick and tired of working. No more I'll dig for Brady's. No longer I'll be poor. As sure as my name is Barney, I'm off to California. Instead of digging Brady's, I'll be digging lumps of gold. When I landed in America, I met a man named Burke. He told me if I'd stay a while, he'd surely find me work. But to work he didn't find me, so there's nothing here to bind me. So I'm bound for San Francisco in California. So it's goodbye, Merchant Durkin. I'm sick and tired of working. No more I'll dig for Brady's. No longer I'll be poor. As sure as my name is Barney, I'm off to California. Instead of digging Brady's, I'll be digging lumps of gold. Well, I'm now in San Francisco, and me fortune it is made. Me pockets loaded down with gold, I'll throw away me spade. I'll go back to dear Erin, spend me fortune never caring. I'll marry to a fine house, and never more will stray. So it's goodbye, Merchant Durkin. I'm sick and tired of working. No more I'll dig for Brady's. No longer I'll be poor. As sure as my name is Barney, I'm off to California. Instead of digging Brady's, I'll be digging lumps of gold. So it's goodbye, Merchant Durkin. I'm sick and tired of working. No more I'll dig for Brady's. No longer I'll be poor. As sure as my name is Barney, I'm off to California. Instead of digging Brady's, I'll be digging lumps of gold.
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire.
Bum, bum, bum.